Hello everyone, how are you doing? I hope that you are doing so very well. Today I am bringing you my best and worst books of 2015. This is something I did last year and I really liked dissecting the things that I liked that I read and things that I didn't like that I read. All these books are books I read this year. They may not have been released this year, but they are books that I read this year for the first time. And also I want to say that a lot of the worst books aren't necessarily books that I hated. Some of them are, but not all of them are. They're just the worst books that I read this year. And another thing that I want to say is that I kind of put these lists in an order. It's not necessarily a definitive order, but I tried to put them from least worst to most worst and least best to most best. It's not necessarily super definitive, but it's kind of definitive. I am very vague all the time. Yeah. Let's begin with the worst books. Number 10 is The Tragedy of Macbeth by Shakespeare. I just recently read this and I didn't really love it. I feel like I might love it if I saw the play, but listening to it just didn't do it for me. It just didn't really work very well. It was like, people were the worst and I didn't really love reading about them. It was interesting, but it just wasn't great for me. And I know a lot of people really love Macbeth, but I just didn't. The next book that I've got is Across the Universe by Beth Revis. This is one that I enjoyed while I read it. It was very fast paced, but the world building was just not there for me. The relationships were very like insta-lovey. Just a lot of things happened and I was like, this doesn't really make sense. And I definitely am not going to continue on with the series because I just did not really like that first book. Number 8 is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I know a lot of people love this book, but it was very lackluster for me. The whole not knowing who the guys were and just kind of going back and forth between things just didn't really do it for me. It was just frustrating and annoying. I liked the main girl character, but the rest of the book, Number 7 is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. I just recently talked about how I disliked this book and I just don't know what the deal was with me reading this book. It was probably a combination of me not really liking the main character and me listening to the audiobook, and it's not really the best book to listen to on audiobook because you really need to absorb a lot of the information and I just wasn't. And her whole story, it wasn't ebbing with me, it wasn't flowing with me. I didn't really like it, I didn't get it, I was just like, But I'm gonna read the sequel because I'm interested in the sequel, so tell me how that makes sense. I don't know, but it's happening and we'll see if I like that better. Number 6 is The Young World by Chris Weitz. I just did not like this book. It's a post-apocalyptic book. The world building and the characters both were like not there at all for me. Neither was the plot. Pretty much none of the book was there for me. It was kind of enjoyable when I was reading it, but I was like, I don't really care what happens to these characters. Everything they're doing doesn't make sense and this plot doesn't really make sense, and I was like, no. It probably didn't help that I was coming off reading one of my favorite books of this year to that book and it was just very lackluster in comparison. It didn't do it for me. Number 5 is The Diviners by Libba Bray. I've talked a little bit about this recently and this book just didn't do it for me. I liked the characters and I overall liked the plot, but it was a little bit too like horror and demon-y for me and it just scared me half to death and I was like, alright, I guess I can't do this kind of paranormal activity book. It's just not working for me. I will probably not read the rest of the books in the series. I'm interested to see what happens, but I'll probably just look it up on Wikipedia. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Next up, we've got Zombie by Darren Shan, and my hate for this book is exponential. There are so many things I disliked about this book. The main character was just not really great or developed. It's a very short book, so I guess she couldn't really be developed, but nah, I just didn't like her. And then her dad is just terribly racist and bigoted, and not in a way that you're like learning from how bad they are. They're just awful to be awful. That's it. That's all there is. The title is Zombie. I was promised zombies. Zombies did not come into play until the end of the book, and that's probably my biggest complaint with it because I was like, I'm in this for zombies. I bought this book for zombies. If you're gonna promise me zombies and you're gonna name a book Zombie, put some zombies in there. Don't just leave it for other books to have more zombies. Coming in at number 3, we've got Fairest by Marissa Meyer. So many things I could say about Fairest. I know it's Levana's backstory and it was kind of interesting to see where she came from, and I guess it wasn't really trying to make you feel bad for her, but that's kind of how the book felt to me. No, please. Just leave the villains as villains. Please don't give me a tragic backstory that makes them still awful, but like, oh, but now you understand where they came from. Don't give that to me. Another thing I didn't really like about it was that it was just very uncomfortable. There was a lot of scenes where I was like squirming and I was like, oh, awkward. No, Get it away from me, I can't do it. Stop, stop. I love the Lunar Chronicles so much, but I hated Fairest so much. The only things that save Fairest from being a 1-star were the side characters, because they were great and that was it. Number 2 is probably my most disappointing read of the year, and that is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. I didn't necessarily hate it. It was a pull between hate and love because there were so many things I disliked, but so many things that I loved, and that's why it's kind of higher up on the list, because it was just so heart-crushingly disappointing for me. I loved the plot points, I loved the action, I loved a lot of the things that she was setting up for. The character development made me angry in so many ways. Kale was destroyed in this book, and Selena was a little bit too. You can go watch my review, I'll link it here, you can hear all of my thoughts about it. I get very passionate and very heated about it, so just go watch that, you'll understand. And coming in at number 1 should not be a surprise to anyone. That is The Program by Suzanne Young. I disliked this book with a passion. It's hard because I understood what the author was trying to do, but how triggering things were dealt with in this book made me so upset and angry, and I was like, no, don't do that, don't do that. I wrote a very long Goodreads review, and you can go read that if you want to really get my in-depth thoughts, but there are just so many things that were not really done well in that book. Like I said, I understood what she was trying to do and what she was trying to get across, but it just doesn't really work for this whole dystopian feel. Nothing about this book was good, and I will not read the rest of the books ever. No. And that was the worst books. There you go. Let's move on to the best books. So excited. Number 10 is The Martian by Andy Weir. I really loved this book, and I wanted to put it on this list because it is probably the best audiobook I have ever listened to in my entire life. It was engaging and it was thrilling and it felt like watching a movie but hearing it being read to you, and it was just so great. It's such a fantastic audiobook. I would highly recommend you listen to it on audiobook if you haven't yet, because it's just so good. And also the movie came out this year and it was great, and I just loved all of it. It was so good, so good, so good. I want to say, like, if this is interesting to you, then you'll like it, but I really think that everybody would like this book, so you should read it, or rather listen to it. The next book that I've got is The Raven Boys. I'm holding up The Dream Thieves because I don't have a physical copy of The Raven Boys, just deal with it. I loved The Raven Boys, and I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. It was so good and so phenomenal, and I cannot wait for The Raven King. It's just so freaking good. This whole series, you should read it because it's just the best. I actually did a review of The Raven Boys, and I'll link it here. You can go check it out. Blue and the boys are all great, and the whole paranormal aspect of the series is great. Everything is great. Everything is the best. You should read it. I'm gonna say that about like every book on this list, but it's true. Next up, I've got the Mistborn Trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I know it's not one book, but I'm just gonna lump it all together because it was all great, and I can't really choose which one of the 3 was my favorite because they're all fantastic. I'm so glad that I was introduced to Brandon Sanderson this year. I love his writing style. I love the other things that I've read by him this year. This trilogy, guys, it also has one of the most bittersweet endings I've ever read. I was definitely super happy, but also super sad. Very well done. Everything about this trilogy is well done. Please read it. Please. Next up, we've got Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. This is definitely my favorite Austen book and probably one of my all-time favorite classics now. It was just so fantastic. All the characters are great. All of the guys in this romance are great. Just everything is great. I watched the movie and I loved the movie, and I was like, all right, is the book gonna be as good as the movie? It was so much better, and I love it. I love classics, and yes, I love it. Number 5 on this list is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. This is just a beautifully written book. It's phenomenal. It's kind of a contemporary, but it's more like a magical realism contemporary with heavy leaning on the magical realism. It's a story of 3 different generations of women. It just goes through all of their stories and just connects them all together, and it's just so wonderful and just a whimsical, magical read. Would highly recommend this book. Next up, I've got A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. One of her books is on my favorites of this year, and one of them is on my least favorites. Who would have thunk it? I really enjoyed this book. I did read it early in the year, so I kind of want to reread it and see if I would still enjoy it as much, but I'm going based off of those first reading feelings. Tamlin is bae, and I loved Feyre as a main character. I really liked her. A lot of people thought she was bland, but I really enjoyed her. I really loved this story, and it was just so great, and I'm so excited to dive more into this world. It's just gonna be great. great. It's gonna be fantastic. I'm really pumped to read A Court of Mist and Fury, guys. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I also did a review of this book, so you can go check that out. I will link that here. You can go see my thoughts. Coming in at number 4 is The Winter's Curse by Marie Brickowski. This is just such a heartbreakingly beautiful book. This romance is great. Everything is great. I know we've been through a lot with the cover changes over the past couple weeks. It's just been up and down and all around, and I'm really glad this series is getting a lot more attention because of that, because it is very well deserved. I'm so excited for the next book to come out because I just need to know what happens. I need my babies to be happy. I love Kestrel. I love Aaron. Mostly I love Kestrel. The whole world building is great. Everything is great. Everything is the best about this book. Yeah. The next book that I've got is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. This is a retelling of 1001 Nights, and it's just really fabulous and really great. Like a lot of the other books in this list, I did a review of this book and you can go check that out here. Shazi and Khalid are just really great main characters. They have really great chemistry. All their scenes together are phenomenal, and Shazi is just one of the sassiest main characters I've ever read, and she's also very competent and very smart, and I just love her so much. I could talk about her all day. Read this book, please. Read it before the next book comes out. It's so good. Number 2 is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is definitely my favorite YA of this year. It's a heist book, but with magic, and the Grishaverse is phenomenal and the best and just so great, and I love everything about it. I really loved the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I love this book even more than that. I love the characters in this book even more than the characters in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. They're all just phenomenal, and they're all just great, and their adventures and their whole heist thing is just so well done and so well written, and the world building is so good. I love it so much, so much. And my number 1 favorite book of this year is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I bought this on Kindle, read it on the way to El Salvador, and actually like finished it in like 2 days or something stupid ridiculous like that, and then I found this autographed copy in a store. This book has just stuck with me since I read it. I have still thought about it. It's been months since I read this book, and I am still thinking about it and still thinking about how impactful it was and how great it was. It's just one of those books that you just keep thinking about after you read it, and the more you think about it, the better it gets. And I really, really want to reread this because it's just so phenomenal and so great. Basically, this is a literary post-apocalyptic novel, so that's a little bit different, especially in YA. We're really used to the like action-packed post-apocalyptic books, but this is not really action-packed. It's more storytelling, and it's so interesting, and it's just so great. And I don't really want to reveal a ton about it because you really should read it for yourself, and you should definitely go pick it up. It's just so great. Everything about it is great. Just read it, read it, read it. My love for this book is like through the roof amazing. And that's it. That's my best books of the year. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you liked hearing about my best and my worst books of this year. Let me know down below what was your least favorite or most favorite of this year, or both, whatever you want to do. I want to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye. In a definitive I was about to say Suzanne Collins. She wrote Hunger Games, not the program. Oh no, that's too far away. It's too far away. Slowly but surely dismantling my shelves. Ah, poop. The Winter's Kiss by Curse. That's a curse, not the kiss. I can't say words. Put it back, put it back, put it back. It's a struggle. Struggle every day.